Hey there, it's the ABCs of Preschool podcast, the place to be for busy moms, teachers, and childcare providers. I'm your host, Miss Amber, an early childhood expert with nearly 3 decades of experience and a proud mama too. I know you're running around with those little ones, so let's jump right in. Hello, everyone. My name is Miss Amber, the host of the ABCs of Preschool podcast. Thank you for joining me this week. I'm excited to share my story, our story of beautiful adoption. I think adoption is so beautiful, so amazing. I am so blessed to be adoptive mom. I don't really say adoptive mom a lot because I am mom. Like that's how I think of myself. But I am really excited to share this story because I know a lot of people in my life, close or just acquaintances, who are struggling, who have been struggling with infertility, maybe miscarriages, loss of babies. And I wanted to bring to light adoption. And I know there's a lot of strong feelings about adoption. There's some people in the camp of, I don't think I could ever adopt because I'm not sure how I would feel because they're not my blood child. And there's other people that are like all about adoption. And so I'm not sure where you are in life, where you stand with this, but I just thought it was kind of time to share my journey of adopting my beautiful, gorgeous daughter. And I can only share, obviously, through the lens of my eyes and not from hers. I've asked her, hopefully one day she will come on here and maybe share her adoption journey through the lens of her eyes. But as of now, she's not quite ready. So I'm going to share our adoption journey, and I hope it encourages someone out there. If you are having that pain and struggling with infertility, or maybe you've lost a baby, maybe it's multiple times you've had miscarriages. I've had a miscarriage. I know the pain and the trauma that comes with it, the grief. So I want to just present another option that is for our family, for me, has been an extraordinary, amazing, I cannot think of my life without my daughter in it. Like it gets me emotional because I can't even imagine not having my beautiful daughter in our lives. So let me back up. So when I was in high school, as we all know, I love kids, right? I love kids. And when I was in high school, I remember sitting on my living room floor watching 2020. The news shows back then. It's probably still on, but I remember seeing a lot of shows on babies in Romania. And there was like cribs and cribs and cribs with babies in it. And they're like in there by themselves, trying to hold their bottles. And I remember thinking one day I'm going to adopt, like I am going to adopt a baby. Like I just knew from early on, probably like 14, 15 or 16 years old, like that was going to be part of my life path. I just felt it. And so fast forward, I had my first son at 22. Then 17 months later, so my first son's name's Spencer, and he was born in 2000. 17 months later, I had our second son, Wyatt, who was born in 2002. And then 2 years later, I was pregnant with our third son, Colby. And during that time, while I was still pregnant with our son, Colby, my ex-husband and I decided that was enough. I was done having biological children, but I wanted to adopt a little girl. Like I knew then, like even carrying Colby, like in the future, we wanted to adopt. So Colby came around in 2004. And in 2005, my ex-husband and I, my kid's dad, and I decided to move forward with the adoption process. And there's a lot to an adoption process. And I think it's very unfortunate in many ways that there's so much red tape in adoption. I think it's very unfortunate. And I think for a lot of people looking at the amount of paperwork, the amount of just everything you have to do to be an adoptive parent, it can feel so overwhelming and so out of reach that I think a lot of people probably give up. And I would encourage you not to give up because there's so many kids out there and you have no idea, but your child could be one of them. If you're struggling with infertility, or maybe you have multiple kids like me, I had 3 boys, but I just knew in my heart I wanted to adopt. And it's a lot of paperwork, but it was worth it. So we at first weren't sure exactly the path we were going to take. We started down the path of being foster parents, foster to adopt. That was the original plan. So I was running Loving Start preschools, raising our 3 boys, all very close together. And we started to go to classes in our county for foster to adopt. Now, the thing about foster to adopt is it's the goal of the county, the goal of the state is to bring the child back to their family. That is the goal. That's the end goal, hopefully, is that foster care is just temporary and that the kids, the children, the babies can go back to their birth families. And at that time in my life, as we kind of walked down the foster to adopt path, I didn't know if I could handle fostering a baby, a toddler, and having to give them back to their parents, even though if their parent was doing fabulous, I would be so happy. But I knew that that would devastate me. I would be so attached and I would love that child so much and that baby that at that time in my life, I felt like I don't think I would be strong enough to have to say goodbye. So we started looking at just United States, like US adoptions with different agencies. And because our situation was, I didn't have fertility issues. I've had already 3 healthy boys. We were told multiple times that like we would be at the bottom of the list. And I'm saying, I'm going to be the first to say it, that is absolutely fair. And I get it. If you are someone who's listening to this and you desire a baby and you want to be a mama, you want to be a parent, I know how you feel because that's how I've always felt. So I would want you to have a baby. I want you to become a parent if that is your heart's desire. So I totally understand that. And that's how it should be. So then we started looking into international adoption. And originally, I was thinking we were going to adopt from Russia. Our boys are all blonde hair, blue eyed. And originally, I was like, well, we'll just adopt from Russia and our daughter's going to be blonde hair, blue eyed, probably the same thing. And we started filling out the paperwork. We were about to like lock in on Russia. And my ex-husband came home one day and said, we need to look into Guatemala. I have friends that adopted from Guatemala and the babies are with a foster mom as soon as they're born and taking like amazing care of them, like 24/7. We need to go look into Guatemala. And I was like, okay. And so we switched gears and we ended up choosing an agency and we focused in on Guatemala. Well, I worked on the paperwork for probably 5 to 6 months. So there's a lot of paperwork with normal adoption. But then when you add on international adoption, I remember like the folder by the time I was done with it and had to mail all our paperwork off was like a mini manuscript, like a book. And the amount of papers that we had to get notarized, physicals, like everybody has to have a physical. You have to have a letter of recommendations. You have to have something that's called a home study where they come and check out your home. You get interviewed. Like it's huge. You get fingerprinted, FBI. Like, I mean, it's a lot that you have to do. And that's why I want to encourage you, like, don't just take it paper by paper. If you think of the whole amount, it gets really overwhelming, but just take it paper by paper. So this was back in 2006. I don't know. I think I started the paperwork in 2005 and I submitted it April of 2006 to the agency, our home study and our physicals, our driver's license, our financials, letters of recommendations, like notaries. Like I had to get so many papers notarized in like different counties in the Bay Area. And it was crazy, but it was all turned in April. And June 10th, I don't know, I can't remember exactly. It's been a while, but around June 10th, I believe it was June 10th, where we were having a birthday party for my son who was turning 2. And I remember thinking at the birthday party, I don't remember exactly the date, if it was like the 9th or the 10th, but anyways, it was his second birthday party. I do remember this. And I remember thinking, I wonder if our daughter's been born yet. And 2 days later, on June 12th, I remember this, June 12th, 2006, we got an email or a phone call. I think it was an email from our agency with a picture of a beautiful baby girl and with a note that said, would you like to adopt her? And of course, there was like no hesitation. Like, I didn't even need to see a photo. I was like, yes. And we had 48 hours to say yes or no. It was instant. Of course, we like wrote back and was like, yes. So on June 10th, 2006, actually I just know it was the same day. So yeah, it was the 10th. It was the same day we were having that birthday party. It was the day that she was born. And 2 days later, we got word that she was born. So she was 2 days old when we got the email that she was born and if we wanted to adopt her. And we said, of course, yes, no hesitation. And so it began. I had a daughter. And I started to love her instantly, like instantly. I hadn't held her. I hadn't carried her for 9 months. I hadn't smelled her. But through the photo, through the knowing that she was born, her soul was born, I already was loving her. And so we started the process of now like finalizing our adoption of our daughter. At 8 weeks old, we got to be invited. So when she was 8 weeks old, we actually went and flew to Guatemala. We took our 2 oldest sons at the time, Spencer and Wyatt. They were little. And we went to Guatemala and we got to meet our daughter, Gabriella, for the first time. And we were also at that time, we were in a really big transition. We were about to move 2 hours away from all of our family, like to a place that we knew nobody. So our house was on the market. We had bought a house. Like we were in a major transition. And this trip would just be to visit her, to meet her, to love on her. We would have the whole weekend with her in our hotel, but we were going to have to give her back to her foster mom because the adoption wasn't finalized. So I remember going into this hotel room and our 2 of our sons were with us and they brought her in and I finally got to hold her and kiss her. And she was so serious. She was like such a serious little baby. And she was so tiny at birth. Like she was so little, but in 8 weeks, because they're with a foster family and a foster mom. And what I loved about Guatemala is that she was never put down. They always had her and they fed her a lot. Like they love to feed their babies, which I think is amazing. So she was like this little chubby, cute, amazing, sweet little baby. And I got to give her a bath. We put her to sleep. So I had the whole weekend with her,
to cuddle her, talk to her, to like get to know her noises and her cry. And then the weekend was over. And I thought, because this was obviously my first time adopting and like bonding because I didn't carry her, I didn't realize how fast I would bond with her. And I thought, going there, I thought, well, for the weekend, it'll be okay. I'll say goodbye. Then we'll go home and move. We'll get all settled. And I'm sure we'll get a phone call where we can go and actually bring her home. I didn't realize how hard it was going to be for me. I get emotional now. Like having to leave her in Guatemala and for me to go back home and leaving her, we had no idea when we would be back. We had no idea when her adoption would actually be finalized, but to like pass her back off to her foster mom was so incredibly difficult for me. Like I was sobbing. And then coming back to the US, like I cried so much. Like all I could think about was my daughter, was Gabriella in Guatemala, and how much I wanted her at home in my arms. And that was August. We got to go visit her when she was 8 weeks. We finally, in November, it was 2 days before Thanksgiving, I believe, we got the word that it was done. It was time to go pick her up. So I remember having Thanksgiving that year in 2006, and our whole family prayed over us. And the next day, her dad and I got on a plane and headed to Guatemala, just the two of us this time, to go pick up our daughter forever. And in the Guatemala adoption, it's like a whole process. There's like DNA testing, fingerprints, and then the last final thing is court. You go appear in front of a judge. So on November 27th, 2006, she was officially our daughter. And we call that her gotcha day. And I know that now some people don't like that term. She's still fine with it. She's still cool with it. We have gotcha. So she's really gets to be lucky because she's got her birthday that we celebrate June 10th, but we also have gotcha day. That's probably even more special than her birthday, honestly, on November 27th. So every November 27th, like clockwork, we celebrate her gotcha day when she became our daughter officially. And she always likes to celebrate. It's like the running joke of the family, but we go to Cattleman's, the steak restaurant by our house, every single year. And she is almost 18 and we haven't missed a year. So we brought her home in November. It was so awesome. I remember that I was so stressed out. She ate so much food that I ran out of formula because we missed our second flight because we flew back to the US with her. We got stuck at customs. We missed our second flight. So we had to catch another flight. I ran out of formula. And let me tell you how hard that was. I had to like find someone. It took me a long time to find someone who had a baby. The airport didn't carry formula, but she was such an easy baby. She came home, it was great. All of our family threw her a welcome home party the next day. She was 5.5 months when we brought her home. And the funniest thing is people would ask me all the time, like, does she understand you? Does she speak Spanish? And I was like, she's a baby. She doesn't speak Spanish. She doesn't talk at all. And I was just talking to her the other night. She's sharing more and more about just growing up. I guess we'll talk about that in a minute, but let me go back to, so our family threw her a welcome home party. It was beautiful and wonderful. And she became our family. She's my daughter, like through and through. And yeah, I cannot imagine my life without her. Like I look at her and it's funny because all of the boys have dimples. She has a dimple too. And I don't know. It's so strange. I mean, I only see her as my daughter. I know like she didn't come from my body, but like, I don't know. I don't see her any other way than my daughter, my mini me. And we're so similar in so many ways. And she would hate for me to say that because any teenage daughter never wants to be told that they're kind of like their mom, but she's just fit in so beautifully. I think adoption is such a beautiful gift. Like I truly do. Like I cannot stress enough that if there is something in you and you're like, I want to adopt, or if you're struggling to have your own child, adoption is a beautiful choice. I think there's so many kids that need homes, and there's so many babies, and there's mamas in situations that they just can't care for their babies. And so that was my daughter's mom. When my daughter was 8, we did go through a lot of, when my daughter was 5, 6, and 7, she started to question, like, where is my birth mom? My daughter is Guatemalan. And I don't know if if you watch this podcast or if you've seen a photo of me, I am not Guatemalan. And either is her dad. We are whiteies, blue eyes, light hair. And that's the way her brothers look as well. And so Gabby is Guatemalan. And I knew going into this that how do you shield your daughter from really hard things? And I just want to say, if you're thinking about adopting and if you want a child, this is just such a beautiful option. And when Gabby was 5, 6, 7, we did have she was asking a lot of questions. Where is my birth mom? She's always known that she was adopted, obviously. So many people would also ask me, are you going to tell her she's adopted? And I would think she's already figured that one out. But she was saying a lot of things like her mommy must be dead, just really deep things for being really young. So when she was about 8, I hired a private investigator and they tracked down her birth mom in Guatemala. So in 2014, when she was 8 years old, our family had just started a nonprofit, Families for Humanities, where we were going to take other families to Guatemala and do travel, but also humanitarian work. So that trip was our first time as a whole family in Guatemala. And it was beautiful. There is a video I posted online somewhere. Maybe if I can try to link that video up, I will. I will link the video up to this podcast. I'll work on finding it. It was the most beautiful, amazing thing. We went to Guatemala, and the next day we had Gabby's birth mom. She had an older brother, an older sister. It was our 2 sisters. And then she has a younger little sister. We had them driven in to our hotel, and I got to hug Gabby's birth mom, and I got to say thank you. And I think that trip really changed the course of Gabby's life in a sense where we did a lot of humanitarian work as well on that trip. And she really got to see, even as an 8-year-old, where I don't think she could quite grasp it and understand it yet, but her mom lived in such poverty. Their typical diet is like 3 corn tortillas a day. So I think Gabby on that trip, because we went to a couple villages, we did some bunk bed building and gave some bunk beds to some homes, some families. So Gabby, even as an 8-year-old, could see, if I was still here, this is how I would live, and this is where I would kind of live, and this is what my life would look like. So I think that was a turning point for her. Even at 8, my birth mom loved me so much. She wanted me to have a better life. And I'm really thankful that we got to meet her birth mom and some of her siblings. It just felt like a full circle moment. And even for me, I was so relieved and so grateful. It was such a gift. And for many years after that, we continued to go down to Guatemala. We continued to do some humanitarian work. It's been awesome. I wanted Gabby to experience her country and her culture. And I know it hasn't been easy for her. And that's why hopefully one day she will come on, and when she's ready, to maybe share her experience through the lens of her eyes as a Guatemalan being raised by a white family in a very white town. And I know it hasn't been easy for her. She shares a lot of things now with me, but I also think she realizes that what a gift her birth mom gave her, because what an extraordinary life compared to her siblings. So that is a little bit of our adoption story. And like I said, like, she is my daughter through and through. And it has been such a blessing and such a gift. And I cannot imagine life without her. So I encourage you to, if you are struggling with infertility or if you want more kids, don't be scared of it. I think adoption's beautiful. I do think it's unfortunate that it takes a lot of, it's not easy to adopt. And I think it's really, really unfortunate. I think it's a messed up kind of system, but going through the hoops, filling out the paperwork, and doing whatever it takes to find your forever baby, your forever child that was meant for you, there's no price tag for that. It's just, there's not. So that's just a little bit about our beautiful adoption story. I could probably talk more and more about it, but I'm so thankful for my daughter. I'm so thankful for all the lessons she's taught me. I'm so thankful for her soul. I'm so thankful that we got to choose her. What a gift. Thank you so much for joining me on the ABCs of Preschool. Wishing you guys a fabulous week. And don't forget to wish it, dream it, and do it. Take care, friends.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear this podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the next episode. For more information on how to work with me, Miss Amber, visit me at thelovingstartway.com or follow me on Insta at thelovingstartway.